Hey, what's up? It's Jim, and today I'm going to talk about the film Track of the Cat from 1954, and this is continuing my quest to review as much of William Wellman's filmography as I possibly can. The Burgess family, who are in their Northern California ranch in the harsh winter when they're woken up because the brother Arthur, played by William Hopper, notices that there's definitely a Black Panther out there, or he assumes is a Black Panther until they see that it is a Black Panther, although we don't see it's a Black Panther. So his brother Kurt, played by Robert Mitchum, and Arthur both go out looking for it when the day breaks, while his brother Harold, played by Tab Hunter, and Harold's new girlfriend, who's probably going to be his bride, Gwen, and the whole family, including sister Grace, played by Teresa Wright, are all going to sit around and squabble while Robert Mitchum and William Hopper go and try to find this panther and kill him before he kills any of their livestock. This is much like Westward the Women. I think this gets categorized as more of an interesting Wellman film than a good Wellman film. But I think this is infinitely better than Westward the Women. And it's such a unique, arty film from Wellman, and one that not sure entirely the meaning of the film. It was filmed in CinemaScope in color, but Wellman had always wanted to make a black and white film in color, basically. And you're like, what the hell, what does that mean? And it is a little confusing. Basically what he wanted to do, film it in mostly monochromatic shades and having a few colors that really pop, particularly Mitchum's coat, some matches he has at a certain point, and certain points they have colors that really pop out at you on screen, or like whenever there's fire, the fire really pops out because everything else is monochromatic. And it happened because apparently he was setting up to shoot a film and the set was actually set for black and white, and he was shooting a film in color. Now, I can't find out what film that happened on. I'd be curious to know, but he had had this idea for a long time, and with him and his cinematographer, William Cothier, who also helped shoot Wings and worked on a lot of William Wellman films, shot this film, and it has a really unique look to it. Apparently Jack Warner didn't get it and was like, why did we pay for color if you're gonna shoot color this way? But I've never seen color look so gorgeous in a Wellman film. It always felt like when he was shooting, I mean, he's mostly a black and white director. If you look at his filmography, the majority of his films, there's certain ones like A Star Is Born that are in color that are very good, but most of his best films are in black and white. And I think that's probably where he was most at home. And the colors just looked gorgeous. I've never seen CinemaScope look this way. And it's considered like an oddball Western, a strange Western. CinemaScope's first weirdy, people have called it, but I almost think it like has a lot of what like the acid Western would have later. It's kind of surreal, it's kind of odd. People have even called it like Greek. I recently reviewed Reaching for the Sun, and I think this and Reaching for the Sun are his only real very strange films. He was a very simple, economical filmmaker, and especially late in his career when he had just come off of two major hits for the Fellows Wayne production company. And this was distributed by Warner's, but apparently they had put in like $500,000 to the $2 million production. A lot of the people who worked on it even said it probably should have been marketed as an art movie. At the beginning you're like, oh no, it's just like an incredibly well shot Western. I mean, some of the things they do, they have all these guys talking in one room, and you just think it's like a simple set, and they open a door and there's like a whole nother set in there. As I'm watching it, I guess the question is, anytime I've seen a poster or images from it, it was always Robert Mitchum on a horse through the snow, or Robert Mitchum in the snow, either with his red coat or his different coat he has on later. And a lot of this film takes place in the farmhouse, with the family squabbling with the alcoholic father and the religious mother and Tab Hunter's character, and his new wife Gwen, and the sister played by Teresa Wright, Grace. As much as Robert Mitchum's the star of it, I'm not sure if it's about more like Tab Hunter becoming a man than it is about Robert Mitchum. And that's the strangeness to it. It has kind of theatricality to it. It's based on a novel by Walter von Tilburg Clark, who also wrote The Oxbow Incident. This is Wellman's second adaptation of one of his works, and this is a lot stranger. But the thing that's going on in the farmhouse, whereas everything with Mitchum is very like cinematic. It's very big and using the CinemaScope for everything it's worth. Wellman wasn't a guy who shot a lot of stuff that he didn't need for his film, and you can really tell he's an economical, lean filmmaker. Having someone like that do an art film is interesting, especially with these landscapes, but then you go to this more like a theater, like when I say theatrical, like the theater, like where you see a play, it feels more like that, like Oxbow did with the family in the farmhouse. And going between that and this very cinematic storyline is an interesting juxtaposition. It kind of shows almost everything Wellman can do, because Wellman could really direct beautiful cinematography and interesting cinematography. He really knew how to use the camera, and this was a whole look, and the whole mood of it was his idea, this whole monochromatic black and white movie in color idea. And he actually kept it a secret from the press and the critics at the time, which maybe he says is not such of a great idea. And I kind of agree with him. I think maybe people would have got it a little more. I had known that, a year or two ago. So when I saw this film, I knew it. And so that affected my viewing of it. So I would be curious to see this with someone who didn't know that and be like, I'm sure their reaction would be like, the fuck's up with this Western? And that they marketed it like a regular mainstream film. I think a mainstream audience wouldn't get this movie. Some people find it pretentious. The author of this, AI Bursreeds, I think, how do you say his name? It was his first draft, and Wellman loved it, and he wanted to keep editing it. Wellman said no, he didn't like that, and he thinks the screenplay suffers. And I actually kind of like it, but it is a weird movie. It's a strange movie, and it's kind of, you're not sure where it's going, which is something odd in a Wellman film. You kind of get the sense of, not that they're predictable, but you get the sense of maybe the format or the genre. He had a great cast. Mitchum, probably one of his least likable characters I've ever seen in Kurt. Wellman's had some really unlikable people for a lot of reasons, but he has someone play them and they are likable. And if you told them about that person as they weren't a character, you'd be like, oh, that person's a shitty, terrible person. But the way Mitchum, it's like, I don't really want to follow him. Tab Hunter and Deanna Lynn as Gwen are the people who I'm really following. And Tab Hunter I actually like. I don't know much about Tab Hunter, unfortunately. I saw him in the John Waters movie Polyester, but I don't think that's very comparable to this. Almost everyone was very good. Particularly one person who plays Joe Sam, who's an Indian who's living on the British family farm and kind of helps out. He's kind of a ranch hand. And he's played by Carl Switzer, who was the original Alfalfa, who had worked with Wellman in Island in the Sky and I think The High and the Mighty as well. He plays an 102-year-old Native American. It's kind of amazing because I did not know that was the original Alfalfa. I wondered who it was. He was actually fairly young at the time still. He was wearing a lot of makeup. As I was watching this film and as I was thinking about this film, is it more interesting than good? Like I said with West for the Women. And I think it's actually an enjoyable, good movie. It's just a different film from Wellman. And as someone who's watched all these Wellman films and has gone through as much of Wellman's filmography as I have, it's weird to go, okay, I'm going to sit down and watch this Wellman movie and have a film that's like so unrecognizable. He goes through so many different genres and it's hard to even imagine him being very recognizable sometimes. But this one is so left field. I mean, it makes Reaching for the Sun look pretty normal. Apparently Warner's was considering putting it in festivals because they thought it was such an offbeat, odd movie in like Venice and Edinburgh. And I kind of wish they had, because I think it could have brought Wellman more of the auteur status that he really deserved at the time and kind of appreciated him more. I don't think this is one of his best films. It's kind of really his only arty film. And it's an arty, big budget film. It's the kind of film that a director really goes out on a limb for, really cares about his vision. I'm not exactly sure what the Panther represents, but I think a lot of this film is about Tab Hunter growing up and becoming a man in the family. That's what I really think this film is really about. But why is it called Track of the Cat? Just because they are technically tracking this big Black Panther, who you don't really see? I don't know. And there's a lot of questions with it. And that's an interesting thing, because I feel like I watched a Stranger 60s Western, and this film was maybe a little too ahead of its time. Had it come out in '74, I think this film would have had a much different reputation. But it got kind of forgotten because it's just this weirdy CinemaScope movie with Robert Mitchum. And it's kind of a weird film for him to make at this stage of his career. You know, not a lot of older directors make movies this strange at this point. Usually people who make this kind of film have something to prove. But I think one of the things that is different about this kind of an arty kind of film is Wellman didn't have anything to prove. Wellman just knew what he wanted to make, and this is the film he wanted to make. I think as he got older, as he got less in favor of his documentary style and more in favor of like Battleground was. And this isn't like Battleground, this is like something different. And I think it shows where maybe he could have gone had he been in the 60s. And although he didn't really want to be when the Hollywood system fell apart, it shows how experimental he could be. And his experimental side hadn't really shown itself in the 50s as much as it had in the 40s and especially the 30s and the 20s. Part of me thinks maybe this is more interesting. Maybe I'm just liking something about William Wellman that I missed through seeing the John Wayne Wellman films. I think this is a good movie. The only real arty Wellman film, and I think he was actually kind of an arty director when he wanted to be, this is the most artsy, weird film I think he ever made. And I think it's a very impressive film in terms of its cinematography and everything it's trying to achieve. Maybe it's too ambitious, but it's a hell of a beautiful film, and it has a very unique look about it. It has a very unique visual style for CinemaScope when everyone was kind of shooting things the same way. Wellman didn't shoot when he was on a location and had all these big shots on it. He didn't just waste them on the location. Everything mattered. And I think that using that and the interesting color scheme gives Track of the Cat kind of a real interesting sense to it. It's a very moody film. A lot of people have called it a mood piece. Making this mood piece art western is one of the odder choices William Wellman did, but there's a reason he was called Wild Bill Wellman, is he would go out for things like this. Seeing both a director have the balls to do something like this, but as a film, I think it's a film that I'm going to think about for a while, and I will definitely revisit again. It's a very good film, and I think it's more than just interesting. So if you have seen Track of the Cat and you would like to talk about it, then comment below in the comments and subscribe if you would like to. So my next William Wellman film will be the last with this Wellman series for a little bit, as I'm kind of coming to a close with the Lafayette Escadrille, and that will be tomorrow, and I hope to see you then, and thank you very much for watching.